a little factoid that our electric vendor has 900 customers it has to buy power from. That's pretty substantial for this part of New Hampshire. Anything else on valuation of utility poles? Okay. Go through correspondence here. This is under other. Do we want to do it now, the CIP submissions, or?
I'm sure that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. This is your work here.
Yep.
Two things to discuss: Tuftonboro Neck Road Bridge and Library Septic System and Sodom Road Bridge. Which one would you like to take first?
Well, I'll be happy to speak to all of them.
Yes.
These are projects that we have submitted to go in the CIP plan. And Tuftonboro Neck Bridge and Sodom Road Bridge were both in CIP from previous years. And what we did is we updated our submission both in terms of estimated cost and in terms of timing based upon the current feedback we got on the State Bridge Aid Program. So that the Tuftonboro Neck Road Bridge, the estimated total cost is now $905,000, and it would be in the year 2026, which is coincides with their the timing of their schedule. And the Sodom Road Bridge cost would be $525,000, and that would be on the 2024 schedule. Obviously, particularly as it relates to Sodom Road, there are some alternatives and unknowns out there at this point. I think we're getting some pricing on a repair to that bridge that would restore capacity in the interim. That's not in, not reflected in what CIP is working on right now, because there's really no know. But at some point we'll have a price from, I think HEB is that who's giving us a proposal on that. The other submission that's gone in is for a replacement septic system over at the library, and we submitted that with a placeholder of $30,000. Once the design is done, we will have something we can then get pricing on and adjust. And my hope is that it will be significantly less than $30,000. We got something as a placeholder in there at this point.
That would be for next year, correct?
That would, yes, that is an item that we will.
And it's my understanding that that would be for no matter what the project for the library is, because the bathrooms in the new phase are in the same place, and they won't change if the project doesn't go forward, correct?
As we discussed before, anything that we do in terms of a new septic system, given that there's consideration of expansion of the library, ought to be in a location and of a size that would support the expanded library. My view is the difference in cost between putting a little larger system in and one that's just adequate for what they have today is not going to be huge. The mobilization and
well, it's designed by bathroom side.
Right.
It's not like we're adding 4 bathrooms.
No, commercial buildings are designed by capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you've got a 100-room meeting room, it's going to have 100 people capacity. versus whatever we have currently, if it's a 40.
32 at the fire station.
Yeah, 32, whatever. So it's premised on capacity.
Right.
So, and I think the other piece to what you said is, this is something that needs to happen regardless of what else is going on with the library. It makes sense to put in a system that would accommodate an expansion, but even if there's no expansion going on next year, we still need a new septic system because what we have there has failed.
Yep.
We talked earlier about updates on existing projects, Union Wharf and at Lake Road, and so I've got some figures that we can adjust from what was in there before. The only other thing is we talked about putting more road construction money in for 2018, and so it would be helpful to at least have a target in mind that we can crank into the CIP thinking on that. And again, to briefly take a trip into history, used to be that the reconstruction money was a line item in the operating budget, and the amount going back some period of time was $50,000 a year. And then the other $185,000 for repaving was an article on the warrant. And 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was, it all got combined in an article on the warrant. And we've had some discussion about separating that back out and or maybe just plus upping the amount in the article on the warrant. So some understanding of where we want to go with that would be helpful in terms of CIP moving forward with their processes.
At the last meeting that Jim was here, I asked him to get written estimates of what it would cost to grind, repave, replace any culverts, and do the edges, have Carol do the edges for Federal Corner Road, Brown Road, North Line Road. And I understand he's working on that according to his paperwork. Also, there is a new process out that they did 5 miles in Ossipee River that involves rubber or matting or something like this. And could he get a price for that to do Shirley Way? And it's my understanding that he's working on those things. I asked if he could be here today to make a presentation, and it didn't work out, so it's a work in progress.
So do you want to put a placeholder for a plus up in at this point?
Well, I think it makes sense to break the maintenance out of paving.
Well, it's not
Because-
maintenance, it's
For
reconstruction.
reconstruction. Because if you don't pave, I mean, if the logic to put it all together was now that people get to vote up or down annually on all of it. Well, if you don't pave, you're gonna have to do more work to make sure you keep the road together until you do pass a paving bill. So one would, I mean, it just doesn't seem reasonable to put the reconstruction money all in the warrant article.
I am a strong supporter of the $50,000 going back where it was before. The reason it got changed, yes, there were some philosophical differences, but it was to put an end to just the unpleasantness. I support you, Chip, that it should be back in.
So does that change the CIP at all? I mean, how's that work?
Well, that's capital expense regardless of whether it's
In the budget or?
in the budget or in a separate article. So, so the real question is,
Oh,
if we're talking about taking the 50,000 that was part of that 235, putting it in the budget, and keeping the paving at 235, which increases the paving budget by 50,000, or are we talking about something different?
Well, I would be in agreement with taking the 50,000 out and putting it in the operating budget,
Right.
maintenance and repair or whatever. Then we need to have a separate conversation about paving. I mean, for years it was at 180,000.
What I have done is,
Regardless of cost.
I have a folder on everything. I had a conversation with Jim. It's obvious to me that Federal Corner Road is going downhill the fastest. And of the 4 roads I mentioned, has the most traffic. And his pet talk about, after about 5 to 8 years, the cost to repair just become exponential. I'm willing to work with you people and Jim on what order of those roads do we want to do. I have a little bit of I've changed a little bit. Why don't we do a road and do the entire road, like Durgan Road? We do it half and half, and it ends up taking 4 years to get some of these projects done. I think the population in town would like to see us do about 5 miles of roads a year, as long as it is millions and millions of dollars. And I'm willing to re-examine that warrant article separately. I'm anticipating that I will support more than $150,000 for just tarring roads this year. How much that is, I'm not sure yet, but I'm open to re-examining.
Well, if we take the reconstruction money out and put it into the operating budget, then we could ask Carol, what's your mileage rate
Yes,
for 2018?
yes.
And figure out how many miles you want to pave, and that's what
About
it
5
costs.
years ago, he said we should be doing 5 miles of town road a year. And we've come nowhere close to that in the last 5 years. And, we're building fire stations and doing other things, so I understand it's a swap.
We haven't reviewed the road agent's budget yet, so I think we
No, we haven't.
We all set on Selectmen CIP submissions? Why don't you, I'll give you my copy here and feel free to work those figures up and represent, like you always do, as at the Board of Selectmen, you've always been reasonable that way. Next, let's do correspondence. This is for the Tufton Borough Selectmen from the Libby Museum.
Right,
Nothing really for us, is it?
Well,
it is.
it is. I think it's significant, all right? This has to do with a lot that's right at the Wolfboro town line on 109 on Mirror Lake. And it was, it's a 1.82 acre parcel with 390 feet of shore frontage. And it's, it was left by Dr. Henry F. Libby to the town of Tufton Borough. And this particular letter is a proposal that that land be turned into something other than an unused lot. Proposal is for proper establishment of the Libby Park in the town of Tufton Borough from the point where the path currently ends in the town of Wolfboro. So they're talking about extending the path, clearing brush and fallen trees to allow clear view of the Ospey Mountains, and adding picnic table and benches and signage related to the use for recreational purposes, and a small sign with information about the Ospey Mountains on it. So they are in the process of preparing an estimate for what these will cost and are looking to have it to us this month so that we can consider it as part of the budget in 2018. And this particular item falls in line with, I guess, my previously stated opinion that the town owns property, and we own it for a reason. Conservation, and not just because somebody defaulted on their taxes, but the piece of property that we actually own, we ought to make it more available to residents and others to use for recreational purposes. At the very least, some sort of signage that identifies it as a town property is appropriate. Development of trails, you know, picnic table, whatever, as appropriate. Some small parking areas, perhaps. Work is going on right now in the Conservation Commission to develop a trail into the Great Meadow with appropriate access points and signage and that sort of thing. I mean, to my way of thinking, this falls right in line with that. One thing that we do need to give consideration to, as it relates to, and all the stuff that I hear talked about in here is not large dollar items, but if we're going to have it more available to people, where are they going to park? Are we going to include a provision with some of that area? And I think we should for some parking. And you know, maybe it's just widening it out so you're parking parallel to the road along there. Maybe it's something different, but you know, we have, for instance, the Gold property, Central Park, that has a nice area for people to park, trail network and all that sort of thing. And I certainly would like to see us with other properties that have been identified as just, that belongs to the town, and we want it to belong to the town. Let's have it available for people to.
Do you have similar thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have to sort of couch them in the full disclosure that my sister's the current curator at the museum. But I mean, that's a property that I think if you read the Dr. Libby Trust documents, that's exactly what he wanted to have happen. I think parking at the Libby Museum is what her current understanding was going to be, because it's a nature trail that they've got at the Libby, and this would just be a continuation of that. I know that she also mentioned signage, that this wasn't a boat launch. This was, you could launch your boat up at the Mirror Lake boat launch and paddle down to the Libby Park. And
I have on the agenda for tonight for the Conservation Commission that the Libby Museum proposal. Can I take this with them? And
yeah, I know she's talked to Steve about that.
And what I've done is I put parking question mark, and I'll represent that the Board of Selectmen are supportive.
And this might be the Parks and Rec.
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. That's it. I think it's a win-win for everybody. All set on that?
Yeah.
Well stated, Bill. This is to the Select Board. The Fire Department is looking to put out a bid on a 12 by 24 shelter logic structure located behind the Melvin Village Fire Station. The shelter is no longer used or needed since the central station has been built. The shelter was used to help mitigate the department's space needs prior to the new building. The structure is showing its age and it should be sold before it deteriorates more. It is recommended that the winning bid include a disassembly and removal by the bidder. Is it okay to put it out to bid?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do we need a vote?
I think we just need to vote to accept the money.
Karen, can you make this happen?
Yes.
Okay. This is from a hazardous mitigation grant application program. This is for review and submission by us.
Isn't that the same one that HEB has been
Yes,
doing?
yes. There's one for each bridge.
And does it require a signature? I don't know if it does.
He put those submissions in for the bridges and they deemed us eligible for funding. And it seems as if there's some additional paperwork that needs to be done. I think it's a few months from now. Should say in the email.
So my understanding is that the application has to be submitted, completed and submitted by April 9th of 2018. Is that right, Karen?
That's what I
Right, so we don't have to finish this thing today.
Oh gosh, no. Just, I guess I was thinking, to be honest with you, is this something that you'd like HEB to come in and sit with you folks about in between?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, they put the initial thing in and then,
Yeah.
Sounds good.
yeah? Okay, I'll have them
Yeah.
come. I'll ask them to.
Excuse me.
Who will work on this?
Karen.
Okay.
It was like April 2019,
18.
was
Oh.
it 18?
Yeah, it was next
Yes.
year, yeah.
Okay.
This is USDA's Community Facilities Program is open. The application deadlines are coming up. One of the contacts in New Hampshire is at Wetco and Getchell in Wolfboro. Did you folks read this? Some of the community projects across New Hampshire they helped fund was to replace computer equipment and software in Littleton and Lancaster. Another one was to replace towers in Hanover and Littleton that enables communities, fire, police, towns, better radio communications. Another one was to install solar arrays capable of producing electricity. I know we had a meeting a year ago with some people interested maybe doing something up at the transfer station. And then the town of Thornton purchased TriTech IMC software and in-house server that will allow the police department in Thornton to be connected directly to the Plymouth dispatch site. Has anyone reviewed this?
I took I looked over it quickly. This is it's one of a number of potential sources of funds to do a variety of projects. So the question is, if we're thinking of projects that would fit with this, who's going to do the legwork to investigate it? Who's going to do the grant writing to get the project in front of the decision makers?
I'll make a phone call to Ann and meet with her and get some preliminary information. No problem.
Yeah.
Now that Time Warner is off the table.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I volunteer to do that?
Yeah.
Sure, that's
Okay.
great. But it's, and I think we talked about it before, one of the challenges to small towns like ours are when it comes to grant funding, we are at a disadvantage against larger communities because we don't have an employee that is a grant writer on staff or has that capability or past involvement. I mean, it's there are opportunities out there, and one of the ways you get grants is you spend a lot of time writing grants, and so you
Get good at it.
you get good at it. You know, sometimes you get a grant awarded, and sometimes you don't. But just a fact of life.
Okay, on
Yeah.
that. Next is New Hampshire Association of Assessing Officials draft ballot. Is there anything we want to do, or ask Rod to do it for us?
Yeah, I just, I have no idea what those people do. So,
Do you recognize any of the names in your world
I
travels?
thought I recognized one, but I know she died.
But you thought she died, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
maybe she's back from the dead. It's just,
I have no problem passing it on to Rod.
yeah, maybe he can explain
Yeah.
it to us.
Okay, just,
But there's only one candidate from each county. I mean, it's sort of like voting for boards of directors and corporations, you don't get a lot of choices.
we
Or
have,
co-op, which is no longer a co-op.
yeah, we have other correspondence that we lump together that is just,
Lumps.
news and stuff like that, no action needed.
Excuse me, was there a letter in there? There should be a couple more things in there. Was there a letter in there about someone wanting to put a plaque
Right on the tree,
and then
Greenwood,
it's just a one sheeter, it might have got stuck somewhere.
Ms. Greenwood, looking
I am,
to.
greetings, I'm writing to request permission to place a plaque by the Christmas tree on the side of the townhouse to designate why the tree was planted there 24 years ago. It was planted in memory of my husband, Lionel Bud Greenwood. I'm not sure if my daughter-in-law, Lisa Greenwood, got permission at the time or not. I would appreciate your attention to and thank you for considering this matter. Sincerely, Lindy Greenwood.
So
What I'll do is I'll check and see if the tree's out there, and if
Yeah, see if you
there's
can
we
look
put
back at the
a
minutes.
plaque on it or something like that.
It'd be nice to have the minutes to reflect,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, maybe
Sure.
sure. Who knows?
That was 24 years ago. Okay,
Not that long.
yeah, you remember that, don't you? And did you say there was something else?
The USDA roundtable questionnaire, is that there? I just need you folks to, then I can submit it electronically.
What, I don't,
That was for that.
LRP, was it LRPC, wasn't it?
Oh,
Roundtable
yes.
questionnaire,
Alright.
it was in there someplace.
Yeah,
Right, so what she's asking for in this letter is permission
Yeah,
to place a
permission.
plaque.
correct.
So I move that we give you permission to place the plaque at this tree on the side of the townhouse. I can't
is the
picture,
tree there?
well, I don't know, but she may be on the side of the town offices. So,
I'll go.
It's a Christmas tree.
yeah,
Maybe we should just look for the decorations.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's a large tree right out there, maybe that's what she
Oh, I thought it
was.
said townhouse, no, it doesn't
It
say?
says townhouse, but a
Oh,
lot of
might
times
have been a
people,
mistake,
a
yeah.
lot of times people get confused, so
I see,
I don't recall a tree next to the townhouse,
okay.
so,
I'll
Get your binoculars too.
Yeah, there's some pine trees.
Yeah.
I know there
I'll
are.
check it out for you
Yeah.
back.
all right.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see that paperwork you asked me to look for.
Okay. Is that motion on
Whoop, which?
the table now, so just,
Yeah, the tree's on the table.
the trees on the table?
So you want to table that motion until you
Sure.
investigate? All right.
This is, please fill out the survey for the upcoming roundtable topics. I'll be going to that meeting in another week. What roundtable topics are of most interest to you?
So you need to fill that out if you're going.
Yeah.
Anything in particular you guys want filled out? I like to talk about all of them. You know, the big one was the electricity savings. Check them off.
one thing that I see on here is that we've had ongoing conversations on is disposal of unused medicines. We've talked about having a drop box here, and there's some issues and that sort of thing. And it seems to me that maybe that's something that on a larger basis we can come up with a with a way of dealing with, you know, within the current restriction of the law, but that makes it easier for people to get rid of stuff that they're no longer using.
Anything you want me to check off there, Chip? A lot of the things they've already done. Look at the household hazardous waste program that Carrie and worked on.
So this is all hazardous, or
Yeah.
municipal waste? Oh, good. And Clay's going?
I'm going.
He's not. Just you.
Okay. I checked that off.
Thank you. And one last thing was, I didn't know if you folks want to talk about various right to know requests or not, and how to communicate that.
There was correspondence about right to know request. Did you folks read it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something you want to talk about today or not, but.
Listen to his comments.
Yeah, on Friday, I remember talking to the staff about some of this right to know, the questions that are in that file, and then new questions that have come about. And then again, at the budget meeting with the Guy Pike, who's a member of the budget committee, mentioned that he wanted to see the accounts payable on such and such a.
Sure.
And my response to that was, the accounts payable folders are open to the public anytime they want to see them. And they're sitting in the office. If they want to spend time, and I guess you voted on a policy to have someone with the people reviewing the files, so
Yeah.
they need to make an appointment. But right to know requests need to come to us. Everything else is available. It's only when something isn't available,
Yes.
or our staff feels that they don't want to make it available without asking,
That's right.
that it comes to
How
us.
quickly we do it.
And so when Guy Pike or anyone decides they want to look at the accounts payable file, that does not in itself constitute a 91A request. That's just a citizen looking to review records.
Yeah.
The 91A kicks in when we need to decide